All right, please join me in welcoming today's speaker, Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Thank you.
So you probably know he is a star, among other things. You might have seen him in Inception, 500 Days of Summer, 10 Things I Hate About You. And his newest film is due out May 13th. It's called Hesher, premiered last year at the Sundance Film Festival. We're not actually here today to talk to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. We're here to talk to his alter ego, Regular Joe, founder of HitRecord.org, a collaborative production company he founded back in 2005.
Well, the production company part actually just started last year.
Okay.
But it evolved from a more informal hobby of mine that's been going since about 2005, yeah.
So tell us the whole story. Take us back to 2005.
All right.
And HitRecord and what happened.
Well, so I've been an actor since I was a little kid, and I always loved doing it. But around that time, I was feeling more and more like I wanted to kind of make my own things and not just work for other people and making their stuff. As grateful as I am to have the opportunity to do so. And so HitRecord started for me as just a little personal philosophy, something I would say to myself is kind of making a metaphor out of that record button that's on a camcorder. You know, I played with video cameras since I was a kid, as I'm sure a lot of, well, I don't know. This is like a law class, right?
Mostly.
All right. Well, you guys have probably still played with camcorders and stuff, right? Do lawyers play with camcorders too?
Occasionally, for better or worse.
All right. So yeah, HitRecord just became this kind of personal, like motivational mantra for me. And shortly thereafter, I put up a little website, HitRecord.org, to show some of the videos that I had been making. This is a little before YouTube was out, so if you wanted to put up videos, you had to kind of have your own website. And it evolved from there. The people that started coming to the website and watching the videos were emailing me, and they actually surprised me in how thoughtful and cool some of them were. And so after a while, I put up one of those kind of prefab PHP message boards, and this community started to form. And pretty soon, it wasn't just about the videos I was making, but the people on this message board. We were all kind of collaborating to make things together, and that was really fun, I found, and much more interesting than just being like, oh yes, let's all talk about how great I am and what I've made. Let's make things together, and so we did that for a while, and after a number of years of doing that, my brother and I kind of made a website to try to facilitate the process that was going on this message board, and that was about 2 years ago and change. And at the top of this last year, I decided what I'd like to do is kind of combine this chaotic, fun, informal, creative process that I had going on this website that I had started for fun, and sort of combine that with the fact that my career as an actor had developed to the point where it was sort of time for me to start a production company, which is what, a lot of actors, once you get to, it unfortunately kind of all comes down to numbers, but if movies you're in have made a certain amount of money, then people will give you money to get projects off the ground. And so it was time for me to start a production company, and I figured why not, rather than just start a traditional Hollywood production company where it's just me and a Hollywood producer and my agents and stuff, what if I combine it with this community I've kind of got going, and rather than just working within the insular entertainment industry, I could work with all these artists from all over the place who are doing great work on their laptops, whether it's, just in their kitchen or in their home studio, or any range of professionalism, and so we figured out a way to do it, to turn this creative process into professional productions. And so what we launched last year, we call it an open collaborative production company, We had to draft this really elaborate legal terms of service that allows for our collaborative creative process to end up being money-making productions. And briefly, when something that we've all made together is judged by me to be good enough to use it in a production, then I use the connects that I have in the industry to make money with it, and any profits get split in half, and half goes back in the company, and half goes to all the different contributing artists that worked on the project.
So give me a sense of who these people are, these contributing artists who helped you create this thing. Put a face on something for me. Who are they?
All sorts of people. I mean, you know, a lot of them are quite young. A lot of them are in high school. They're a lot in North America, but also quite a lot in really all over the world. Mostly North America and Western Europe, but quite a lot in Eastern Europe. There's some in South America. There's some in Asia. There's a few people in Africa that are working on stuff that we've done. Definitely Australia. You know, so all over the world. And a lot of them are professional artists who want, you know, to do something other than their job. A lot of them are not professional artists, but are, you know, are great at what they do anyway. And then there's also people who, you know, are even maybe hesitant to call themselves artists. But that's also part of what I love about what we do, is sort of like being like, yeah, but, you know, you can do it. And there's actually a lot to be done for people, even if they don't contribute videos or images or writings of theirs. Just them being there and kind of recommending the things that they think is good, or writing remarks, that's actually really helpful in weeding through the vast amount of records that we get and finding the good stuff.
So I want to ask you lots more about the process of collaboration behind HitRecord, but before I do that, I want to make sure everybody sees what you end up with, one of the finished products here. So we're going to take a look at the clip. This is Morgan and Destiny's 11th date.
Well, that won't work. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can do one then.
Yeah.
Or two without the new credits.
Yeah, do the one with the credits. I think it's better. One's good. It's a little shorter too.
So this will be their first date.
This will be their first date. That's right.
Dates with Destiny.
Can we kill the lights?
Capricious Califrag Morgan M. Morganson stood in the long room of his four walls, narcissing himself in the double glass. He horizontalized his neck bone and let a long stream of air out of his face-hole. He was ready to authoriate, or at least ready as he'd ever been. The eat room was all a-shadow with tiny flames of wax sticks. Our man Morgan understood onto a person holder and waited as the time teller ticked and tugged on. Tardily, the saxifragus personette swayed through the wall hole. Her head front was polypainted with faux face, lips cherried to the max, sea-globe hairs and plastics twinkling to the arachne monsters. Morgan lip-lifted, twittering at the personette. He re-stood and presented her with the person holder, upon which she speedily settled her back cushions. Merry free night, tittered her. You're thoroughly appropriation. Why, thank Triple A and after you, served and suited, you were quite a sea treat. Morgan piggified as the food went apparated, penguin dressed. The gent was simply seeable as a skull, his down-looking head front formed as if he ever had a face all full of sour yellows. The eat-room pigs lay person-pawed a duo of eat lists to Morgan and the personette, then disapparated. The potential procreators Seagrove scanned the eat lists chetlessly. They picked their eat plates and the food bringer reapparated, primarily questioning Morgan on his disapparated eat plate. For me, the body of a bunny baby, please. And how do you preserve your bunny baby, sir? Black, brown, or bleeding, please? Morgan ordered. He lifted at the food bringer and then targeted his sea globes at the personette. He was shook to see her sea globes dripping a little salt liquor. And for you, personette? Glove hiding, she unquestioned. The ovary assumption for me. Morgan spit swallowed and loosed the top flaps of his chest cover. The food bringer held in a snorkel float and worded, "And for wet, for liquid, we will have the juice of old red grapes. It's very old." Morgan speedily shut a solo single over the food bringer. The food penguin boomeranged with a gesture, then disapparated with a surmise. After another chatless word gap, the eats apparated. The food penguin citrusly unhid Morgan's eat plate. On it, unlived, the corpse of a bunny baby. Its manicularity was as yet unmoved, its olfactory organ uninitiated and acute. The personette yoked loudly, a puddle of pre-puke ascending into her face hole as the eat-ready fluff pet met her seat lobes. The personette's eats were a plate forest, a feast of foliage, a fleshless food pile. Morgan gayly subservieted the bereaved bunny and posed seated to chomp the accessible green, duetting it. The personette, lip-lifted, amated by Morgan's sacrificious herbivorosity. Post-bunny boycott, the word gaps filled vastly. The personette flirtated deliciously, tilted Morganwards, displaying her front cushion's bashes. Morgan fell down horrified by this ferocious familiar. Haberdashed and mortified, he did until she toe-tangled within his subtail. They speedily slurped their grape liquid, their person paws paired tableside, and gloated by the flaming wax sticks. Food bags full rained money into the food penguin and uprighted themselves. The personette had decided to subvite debt, but Morgan and Morganson swayed his top ball pensionably no, and that was that. Out in the no-walls, duet locked seabirds, top ball deep in procreation and rotation. The personette touched her bobbing lip with her top chompers and tilted Morganwards once more. Morgan, pinkified, shut his sea-glow covers and precipitated his top bowl to the personette's face. An alternated tilt Morganwards. And the pair were caught. Morgan and Morganson almost love-exploded with gratification as the flourishes familiar tongue tangled with him. Through the hard clear of the eat room, the formerly falsituous food penguin lifted his citrus lips to the passion-paired persons. How could a humanian fail to be imitated by such a celebrations coupling? And that moved up when Morgan and Morganson horizontalized himself on his sleep platform. For once, it was not a lonely.
So, we also, wait, before you dim the lights, sorry, before you turn the, we also have like a sort of a making of thing, right? Yeah. So the way that started was a young woman in Ireland named Sarah Daly just wrote a great short story and posted it to our site. And the community really liked it. A lot of people were recommending it, so I saw it and I really liked it. And I find that one of the best ways to get people to work on stuff rather than just say, hey, do this, do that, is if I participate and I work on it, then everyone will join in. So I recorded an audio voiceover of her short story and just posted that by itself to the site. And people really liked that, and people started drawing the characters. And then when those drawings went up, other people would download those drawings and turn them into animations. And once all that was starting to go, I thought to myself, all right, well, this is really a good project. And I decided to record a live action version of it. So I got together with an actress, and we shot what you saw, but just in front of white walls, like that. And put that up on the site. And then said, okay, now everybody contribute other visuals that can go on top of that or underneath it, so to speak. And they did. Lots of people started drawing all sorts of things, contributing photos, illustrations, etc. And then one particular visual artist who's really did this great work, and he took everybody's visual contributions and added a bunch of his own, and made the sort of visual landscape that you saw in the movie. And then for music, the way we did it was I had a friend of mine compose a score to go along with it, and he just recorded sort of demo tracks with just a few instruments and said, all right, here's the score, here's the parts, and he put that up on the site, and then we said, all right, now everybody who plays any kind of instrument, take these parts and you play them on whatever you want. And we got tons of contributions of people playing all sorts of things, and as you can hear, we have something like a 40-piece orchestra playing the score of this, but it's all just disparate people from all over the world contributing little bits and pieces, and then it all got cut together. Oh, sorry. And then we screened it at the Sundance Film Festival. So that's kind of what happened.
So what, if any, resemblance does the final product we saw there bear to what you had originally conceived, maybe when you read the story or started the voiceover? How does it compare to that?
It's a lot grander than what I thought was going to happen. Part of the reason why I decided to shoot it in front of white walls and sort of do it in very stark black and white was I was sort of imagining something much more like simple black and white line drawings to go along with what we had done. And but the visual contributions, and especially the work of the one visual artist, Laurie Brewster was his name, really surprised me, and it ended up looking a lot more lush than I expected. And same goes for the music. I was sort of expecting, an acoustic guitar and maybe there'll be some other things, but it ended up being this huge, lush, orchestra-sounding thing. And so it ended up just a lot bigger than I thought.
It seems like this wouldn't exist without the HitRecord community and the collaborators that got together to do this.
Sure.
So
well, it's the kind of thing that if you wanted to make something like that in the more traditional fashion, you would spend $100,000 or something like bands used to do in the 90s to make music videos, But we made this for no money.
So this opens the door to things you didn't even especially imagine at the beginning, because the people you're collaborating with contribute things you never saw coming.
Yeah.
So that seems like a fantastic element of it. Are there any downsides to trying to do what you did here in the way you chose to do it through this open collaborative process?
Downsides are, it's kind of, I think I, as a director, have to be even more open to spontaneity and things going unexpectedly. I think any director has to be that way, even in the most traditional sense. Even Christopher Nolan, who directed The Dark Knight, that's just the reality of making a movie. When you get on set, sometimes things aren't how you expect and you have to be spontaneous. But in this case, I think there's a lot more spontaneity, and you can't quite know what to expect, and I can't necessarily expect to have something totally specific in my head and get exactly that.
So it sounds like the adventure is part of the point, the unpredictability.
Well, yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen when you start out to make this thing.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, this is an example. This is kind of the grandest example of something we made, but it's also probably the most traditional in that it's the closest to, it started with a piece of writing, and then then there was production, then post-production, and most of the stuff that we make actually is a lot more chaotic than that. And things come way out of left field, and all of a sudden, someone takes this, this piece of music, this piece of video, and this piece of writing that had nothing to do with each other, that weren't conceived ever to be together, but they saw a connection and put it together in this cool way, and all of a sudden you have a piece, and that's even way less traditional,
And is there another clip that we want to show along that line, or? Not quite that.
I could.
No. We'll save that.
All right. Let's see. What
If you have one you think illustrates it, we can do it.
Think of one, maybe, and we'll get back to you.
So why has HitRecord remained so important, or maybe it sounds like become more important to you, even as your career as a movie star has catapulted? Why is it stuck with you the way it has?
Can I be weird and say, can you actor, not movie star? Why? I mean, I love doing it. It's like I said, it's kind of why I started it. It's something that's, that I'm doing that's, I think, kind of unique to me and what kind of creativity gets me excited, and it's fun.
So where does this model go from here? Where do you see it going? Where do you want it to go? What do you want to do with HitRecord?
Well, like our first production was we went to Sundance, and not only did we screen that, we also screened like 10 or so other short films that we made within the span of the 10 days up at Sundance. That was really fun. We did that at South by Southwest as well. We just published a book. This is called The Tiny Book of Tiny Stories, and it is what it sounds like. It's a bunch of tiny stories people write. They're a sentence or a few sentences long, and then other people will take those stories and make illustrations for them. Or sometimes it goes backwards. Sometimes someone just puts up a drawing, and someone else will say, "Hey, I like that drawing," and they write a tiny story for it. Right, and then those tiny stories get turned into short films. Oftentimes the illustrations will get turned into animations, and the words will get turned into voiceovers, and then music gets added, and yeah, we could show a tiny story.
Yeah, let's see a tiny story.
Which one are you going to show?
I was going to show Dandelion,
All right.
but I don't know if there's labels.
The dandelion awoke one day to find his mane turned to gray. Shortly thereafter, it blew away.
Yeah.
True to the title.
Yeah, tiny story. So that's in here. It started just as that story. The dandelion awoke one day to find his mane had turned to gray. Shortly thereafter, it blew away. Someone wrote that and contributed it to this Tiny Stories collaboration. And someone read it and drew this. And then an animator took those illustrations and turned it into that animation. Actually, I think I did the voiceover before she animated it. And then we just found a piece of music that went well, that someone had put that piano piece up there unrelated to the dandelion. Yeah, so that could be, so that turned into this book. We're making another book that we'll put out next holiday season. We're going to put out a DVD in the fall. It'll be sort of a DVD/book/CD of a bunch of the short films and writings and images and music and stuff that we've made. We're talking about how to put together a TV show. We do a lot of live events. We just did one night before last in LA at a 500-seat movie theater, and we're doing one tonight here at Stanford, and we're doing a couple other colleges. And we have it's a fun kind of night at the movies where we play a bunch of short films that we've made, and we do some live performances, and we get everybody to record the thing as it's happening, and we make stuff as it, in the room there, and that's fun. And so I don't know. Does that answer the question of what I might hope it to be?
Absolutely. So when you moved HitRecord toward the model of a collaborative production company, you made a conscious decision to include purely original material. You don't borrow from outside. It's all
Right.
things people have created specifically for HitRecord. Why did you do it that way?
Because that's the law. Because the idea was to make a legitimate professional production company and take the stuff that we were making and sell it and use it to fund further projects and become a for-profit company. And so you can't go around selling Lil Wayne songs without his
Right.
permission, So that's one of the things on HitRecord is you're only allowed to put up stuff that's yours. And even though YouTube says that, they don't really, everyone puts up stuff that's not theirs on YouTube. We actually make quite a bit of effort and to keep it that way, and people do. And it's cool. What it creates is it makes sort of this little oasis of records that you are allowed to remix,
Right.
and that's not illegal. And because I mean, there's a lot of brilliant remix art that's happening nowadays, and a lot of it can't kind of go anywhere in the professional realm because it's illegal. But on HitRecord, we've sort of, because everything that's been uploaded there, the person who put it there has already agreed. Yes, everybody in this community, please go ahead and download it, remix it, do something new with it. That's, the honor is mine, and that's the point, and that's our process. So it means that remix artists can do something and have it not be illegal and have it go somewhere professionally.
So you wanted to avoid the legal hassle from the get-go by telling everybody, look, all we want here are original works from you, not anything you borrow from somewhere else. But as a result of that, you avoid the legal hassles, but it sounds like you feel like it unleashes it towards greater potential because those hassles don't rear their head down the line.
Yeah, and then you have the spirit of sharing. It's just that sharing is sort of within this community of people who have all agreed to share in that way.
So does that choice to stick with purely original things as opposed to borrowing to the extent the law might allow you to borrow, which some would say is pretty large, does it constrain you in any way? Does it feel like it prevents you from doing things you'd like to explore, saying things you'd like to say?
Sure. Like before we turned it into a production company, when it was the more informal version, in 2009, excuse me, we didn't have any legal anything, and so of course people would make videos, and if they wanted to use a Rolling Stones song in their video, then they would, and that can be great because sometimes it's got to be that one song, and no, we can't do that, and or it would be nice sometimes to just be able to go on Google Images and find just the right photo that you want to put in your documentary or whatever, but we don't do that. We only use photos that have been put on our site. And in a way you could say that's limiting. On the other hand, we have so much stuff on there. We get 1,000 new records a day. So I actually find that the degree to which it limits us, creativity can often be stimulated by limits. And I haven't found it stifling per se.
So do you think this set of rules that sort of forces people to not borrow, but rather start themselves, so you think that has some potential to sort of stick as a series of communities where people build things precisely to share them within the community under a defined set of rules that tell them from the beginning, look, whatever happens with this, it's going to be built on and turned into something that you never expected it to be?
Yeah, I think that's happening all over the place. There's lots of communities that are doing that in various ways. Some more informal, some quite formal, like what we're doing. And yeah, I think it's intrinsic to the technology that when you have, that's what digital stuff is. Ones and zeros can be copied, and it's hip hop exists because of samples, and that's like, I make that point just because generationally, I think the way that we think of creativity now, that's just, you want to do that. You hear something great, you want to do something new with it. I could put a different beat under that, or I could take that story in a different way, or I could put that photo next to this one and make a good point. And I think that's collage, there are remix or mixtapes, or it's curation. It's a big part of creativity. It always has been, and I think it especially is now in the sort of post-internet age. So yeah, I think until the law catches up, there will be people who work their way around those sort of old-fashioned laws.
So what does the law have to do to catch up with these constraints you're talking about and open the door for people to do the things you're talking about?
I would say that if it were legal to do what people are naturally doing, if you go like on YouTube and you look at, all sorts of copyrighted stuff is remixed. It's illegal, and if someone Well, right. I guess it's illegal according to the dominant forces in the business I work in.
Right.
It's illegal, especially if they're going to make any money at it. But people do it anyway. So I feel like Lawrence Lessig says in Remix, in that book Remix that he wrote, that you're basically just turning a whole generation of kids into criminals because you made laws that don't make sense with what their voice is. And so in that way, I think until the law kind of catches up and acknowledges the fact that once media becomes digital, it's going to get copied, it's going to get remixed. To call that illegal is silly.
And one of the reasons I want to talk about that with you is because you are right there in the middle of that discussion, in that you make probably the large part of your living as an actor in major motion pictures.
Yeah.
So the powers that be are also the powers that you need to do what you do on some level, but you're also doing this project where you're incredibly interested in all the creativity and collaboration that can possibly be brought to bear. So if you're wearing both hats, where to think about how the maybe movie studios or record labels or singers and actors should be compensated versus opening the door to the sort of free collaboration you can imagine if you weren't constrained, where should the slider move, since you have an interest in maybe either direction?
Right. Well, to me, I think one of the first things I would say, and obviously that's a huge question, but to me one of the first things I would say is I think the law right now is 100% dedicated to protecting the financial interests of the people with the finances. If the law were instead at least partially dedicated to something else that I think is very valuable, and I'm not trying to say that money isn't valuable, but I think there's something else about stories, about music, about writing, about expression and communication or art or whatever you want to call it, records. There's something valuable about that beyond money. That's at the very foundation of what makes us human and a civilization. And I think the law ought to be somewhat interested in protecting that. And right now, laws that criminalize remix culture are going against that. So I'm all for artists being able to support themselves. I think that's great. But I think these laws aren't really in the name of artists really supporting themselves. It's not so that, a singer can have a nice, sustainable middle-class income. It's so movie executives can have a house in Tahoe. You know what I mean? And that's...
So you feel like we've gotten past the point where there's any work being done on the creative incentive, and this stuff is going to be made, and it's just a question of how much are you going to make when you make it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's about the money.
And so as somebody who both participates in the traditional motion picture industry and the alternative that you see there, what things can you imagine doing that you can't do now? What would if you move the slider, what does it free people like HitRecord to do?
Well,
what can you imagine?
Well, I think we could participate more in a broader pop culture conversation. I don't know, when 10 movies get nominated for Best Picture, those movies get on everybody's radar. And you could really say something really powerful if you were allowed to take bits and pieces of those movies and mix them up and put them together with new elements or whatever and say something. And you could really speak to people in a language that they could understand. But that's not allowed. Because you're not allowed to take bits and pieces of, the Best Picture nominees, because Interpol will get you.
So it seems like we've lost a lot of follow-on creativity. One of the things that frustrates me about copyright law is it seems to think purely in terms of rewarding rather than creating. And so if you think about the way it's supposed to work from the get-go, the whole idea here is that we, as people, are giving over these monopolies on speech. We're handing them over to people and saying, you get to monopolize this for your lifetime plus 70 years. And everybody forgets that there's a huge social cost you pay right there by just putting the speech off limits, never mind the follow-on creativity you lose by telling people they can't play with Best Picture nominees and things like that. So as you move that slider around, what I think always gets lost is that social picture. Are we making a good social trade-off? What are we getting when we hand over these monopolies on speech? Are we really getting anything back in terms of expanded creativity?
Yep.
Or are we just giving away rights that really don't bring anything back to the public? So the example I always like to use is, so let's say we added a rule that says you can sample any song for 15 seconds without paying a dime. Question to everybody, do you think that would result in less musical creativity, less music in the world, or more?
I would say more.
Probably more. But we don't do that because, or we won't do that because it's simply not the priority that we've decided upon right now.
Right.
So as you think about where things like HitRecord go, are you stuck with those constraints? Are they movable? Do you see them changing over time through people's norms, through what kids do now?
Sure. If the laws were to change, I would definitely change the way that we handle our legal terms of service.
I guess do you feel like people that you're working with today, let's say 20-year-olds, do you feel like their attitudes are different than people 2 or 3 times their age when it comes to what you should be allowed to do with content?
Absolutely. Well, I think like hip-hop's a good example. If you take like someone my age who grew up listening to Dr. Dre, you hear Dr. Dre sample a Funkadelic song, and you're like, sure, it's a Dr. Dre song, he remixed Funkadelic, but yeah, Dr. Dre's a great artist. But I think in the past, maybe some people would say, Dr. Dre is just a thief. That's a Funkadelic song. And I mean, that's just a matter of perception. And I mean, I would also argue that that's ridiculous because Shakespeare wasn't the first one to write Romeo and Juliet. And, you know, the way that human creativity works is you're always sort of speaking with the words that you've heard, and you're singing the scales that you've listened to, and you're drawing the images that you see, and it's certainly influenced by other drawings that you've seen. And to say that anybody's expression is wholly original, I think is sort of a fallacy. I would say that either everything's wholly original or nothing is. And I mean, that's getting sort of philosophical, unless I don't know how you actually go about quantifying that into legal terms, but that's your job.
So, I mean, it's a tough one. If you assume that, it's let's just to pick an easy label, Hollywood or the record industry pushing for these rules, is that lost on them, or do they understand that and want the rules they want anyway?
I don't think most of them care at all. It's really just a business, just like selling refrigerators or cars.
So as you know, the generation that's 20 right now moves up into the world and presumably, starts filling those slots, even in major content owners and traditional media companies. Do you see room for change from the bottom up, or do you think that it's a situation where once you get there, you just sort of give in?
I mean, it's changing. It's already happening. And it's happened like with the music industry is sort of ahead of the movie industry. There like almost is no more music industry compared to what there was. I mean,
but there's lots of music.
There's even more music. That's exactly right. And there's no more Tower Records. There's no more Virgin Megastore. I'm from LA. One of our landmark buildings is the Capitol Records building. It's this big skyscraper that used to be full of record executives. It's gone. There's no more people in there working for Capitol Records. And I think that will also happen to Hollywood. I think Hollywood movies will probably turn into something sort of like Broadway theater. They'll exist, it'll be there, and it'll do huge, big, often cheesy movies. Sometimes there'll be a great one. And that's what it'll do, these huge, big things. But there'll be more and more and more movies, which is already happening, made, on people's phones. And will a lot of them be, will all of them be super great films? No, of course not. But some of them will be. And I think that's good.
So it seems like technology drives a lot of this. The reason that there's both lots more music but fewer record executives is because everybody, almost everybody now has the tools
That's right.
to create a fairly professional sound recording, maybe at home or at least in some part of your home that you converted rather readily. Do you see the same thing? You see the same thing happening in the motion picture world? Do you start to see the same tools that, I mean, the quality of production in Morgan and Destiny is fantastic. I assume that's partly because of tools you have. Does everybody have these tools? I mean, is this something you see everybody being able to do relatively soon?
I mean, we shot Morgan and Destiny on that, where's Mark? On that camera, which is, I mean, that camera cost $8,000. If we shot it on my phone instead, it wouldn't maybe look quite as good, but to be honest, it's like it's gone through so much digital processing and so many people have kind of had their hands on it through Photoshop and After Effects and stuff that, I don't know. I mean, I think maybe we could have even shot Morgan and Destiny on my phone and it might have looked just about as good. And look, will there always be a place for spending $20 million and making a movie? Yes, because there's no replacement still, no matter how good the computers get, for a nice fat piece of glass on the front of your camera. Nothing else looks like that. Or having a beautiful, huge light that makes the light look the way it does in Hollywood movies. You can't, you still, at this point anyway, still can't really fake that. So I do think there will always be a place for more expensive production value. But yeah, no, I think what you said is exactly right. The tools are becoming economical and available for wider use, and so more and more people will be able to do it.
Could you imagine, for instance, a TV series being made through the HitRecord model?
Absolutely. I mean, TV nowadays, the reality TV is shot on that camera.
If they're lucky.
Yeah, exactly. So, yes, and I actually, as bad as a lot of reality TV is, there's the thing that encourages me about it is that mainstream audiences have grown accustomed to watching stuff that's shot on, really lo-fi technology, and that's a good thing. Because, in 1978 or whatever, Jean-Luc Godard was making movies on video cameras, but nobody would watch them.
Right.
Because they're like, what are you doing? These are video cameras. It's for
Doesn't
TV.
look like a movie.
Yeah, it's not a movie. But it's happening. People, I think, are growing accustomed to the look of it.
So what I want to do is for the next 15 or 20 minutes, I want to open it up to questions from the audience. So we got the camera, we got the sound. I want to mention to everybody, not surprisingly, we are recording. So if you stand up and you want to ask a question, it means you will be recorded. You may find yourself on the website or our website. So understand
in
that.
our documentary.
In all sorts of places. So if you don't want to be in any of those places, don't stand up and ask a question. But if you do ask a question, please understand that it may go all of those places. We scared everybody away.
So what's interesting to me is almost that, your production model poses a bit of a challenge for those people, or at least arguably, working in fair use who want to sample. In a sense, it's a counter. It says, well, you don't need everybody else's stuff because you can just do this community where everybody's starting sui generis. Is that a model that we're moving toward, and what gets lost, and what are some of the trade-offs there? I guess is a question for both of you.
Right. Well, one thing I would say to that first is we do use fair use stuff. Like, we use a lot of public domain stuff. Like in that Morgan and Destiny, if you see the paintings on the back of the walls and stuff, and et cetera, there's a lot of public domain stuff that's in there. I'm not sure technically what the difference is between public domain and fair use. Maybe you could answer that.
I could answer that.
Oh, wait. So, the last thing I would want to do would be discourage anybody from doing their shit that way. But in the meantime, yeah, we've sort of created an end around so that we can make art in this way, in this sort of sharing way, where the notion is, if you see something, you are allowed to make something new out of it. And yeah, rather than try to struggle against the laws and have legal battles with every project that we do, our solution was to, okay, let's just create our little world and do it within that.
So Ryan actually put his finger on one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation here today, because I spend most of my time advising people on fair use and litigating fair use cases and defending everybody's right to take and borrow and use and create and remix. One of the things I think is so interesting about HitRecord is it shows creativity sort of developing in parallel. You have lots of people who do things like that, and I think it's extremely important, and I think there are even things you can't say or communicate or convey without borrowing. I mean, if you want to say something about the Best Picture nominees, you're going to have to borrow the Best Picture nominees. So there are a whole huge array of things that you can't really say without borrowing. But what I think is also interesting is you're moving on this parallel track that says, well, you can do that, but that's not what we're about. And you've sort of used the existing legal apparatus, kind of like Creative Commons has in a way, to set up this sort of open space where there's some rules when you show up, namely you're contributing your stuff to HitRecord, and there's no telling where it's going to go. Everybody gets to use it, and creating this sort of, alternative universe of creativity if you compare it to the fair use route. So, I mean, what it means to me, at least, is the really important thing is on some level, as best we can, for the law to either get out of the way or help people create this stuff. And sometimes, with respect to a fair use question, it needs to get out of the way and let somebody just do it. You've sort of found a way to use it to create the space you want to create to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And to me, the answer is everybody's got to be able to do either one, both, and probably 7 other variations that we haven't seen yet.
Right. And, the other thing that reminds me of is that when all the different people who contributed to a project, if we're able to make money with it, we've kept track of all those different people. So all those different people, if there is money, will get compensated. And I think that is important, in fact. I wouldn't advocate for a world where artists take other artists' stuff, make tons of money with it, and don't share that money with the original artist. And Dr. Dre does pay George Clinton for sampling his P-Funk songs, and I think that's right. But where it gets wrong is when that money becomes preventative, so that artists aren't allowed to do those samples.
So the way you describe that is the freedom to create with some obligation to compensate. Maybe it's a legal obligation, maybe it's a moral obligation.
I guess, yeah.
If you unlock commercial value.
If there's money,
borrow it.
yeah, I would say.
Other questions?
I'm interested more in the HitRecord system. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about Morgan and Destiny that this writer wrote a short story and you recorded yourself reading it and then people jumped on board.
Yeah.
To what extent does your presence in a particular project influence how or when or if that project comes to fruition? I can imagine, more people would be interested in something that has your imprint on it.
Yeah. Heavily. The influence is heavy, and it was designed that way. It's there are creative communities online that are sort of directorless and just purely chaotic, and a lot of cool stuff comes out of that too. Like what's it called? 4chan? Is that what it's called? Right? I mean, everyone's totally anonymous on 4chan. And it's entirely illegal. They just, use whatever. I don't think anyone's made any money off it, which is probably just as well. But a lot of really funny or witty or smart stuff comes out of that. it's totally different than what we wanted to do was have a sort of a hybrid where there's a bit of that chaos, but there's also a director and an individual's voice that puts it all together. And so system-wise, we on our front page, the first thing you'll see is the record that I featured for that day, because that's what I want the community to be paying attention to. Or if you go to our Collaborate page, you'll see videos that I make where I'm like, okay, so here's what we're doing, and here's what I'm seeing, and let's try this, and let's do that.
I guess more of my question too is as the community grows, do you see yourself will it be more difficult for you to filter out all the good projects, since?
Right. We've found that actually as it's grown, it's gotten easier because a lot of what the community does is that curation. You can see what people are recommending. People will make albums of the things that they like or that they recommend. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure. As it grows, maybe we've also had a lot of success where I've sort of co-directed something with someone else, like the guy who started the Tiny Stories collaboration. The artist, he goes by Wiro, and right now we're sort of co-directing this creation myth this project that he started, and I'm still kind of directing it, but he started it and he's sort of directing it. So in that way, it's been delegated to him, and so I think that'll be a way that as it grows, I'm able to not spread myself too thin, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
Having gone through the traditional way of making films in this new, more interesting way, what's the difference in the way that it feels as a participant?
Well, yeah, it feels really different. I mean, for one thing, that the time is just, it's so much fun to be still in the middle of the rush of the creative process and then put it up and have people seeing it right away and remixing it right away. That's exciting. Whereas, a movie that I shoot in a Hollywood movie, you shoot it and it's not for a year or more that it comes out and people are seeing it and talking about it. So there's that time difference, but also like I said, I think probably the biggest difference is that when I make something and it gets out there, it is very satisfying when people like it. If it gets a round of applause or it gets a laugh, if someone writes a good review, sometimes that's satisfying, etc. But that's sort of the extent of it. Whereas the feeling I get when I've made something and someone has taken it and made something else that I didn't expect, but it inspired them to do something, that is fascinating and invigorating to me on an entirely other level. And I would say that's probably the biggest difference.
So just to recap, so that this way is fun, exciting, invigorating, inspiring, and the other way, all I got was satisfying. But that's good. So nice.
I mean, I'm trying to start something new here. I love getting to do what I do traditionally. I truly do love it, and it's different.
Okay. I was wondering, basically, right now it seems that it's this large public that are contributing to the movies that you make, and that's amazing. And I was just wondering what type of, response you expect from the industry. Do you expect big name musicians, directors, actors to actually eventually start to come on and contribute to the videos like you do? And is that even a direction you want HitRecord to go into in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've done some stuff like that. Like we made a second episode of the Morgan and Destiny thing, and I got a friend of mine who's a very known actor to also act in it, and that was cool, to see something that we were doing look sort of like big Hollywood, because And it so happened that right when we were shooting it, Chan Tatum is the actor, and like right when we were shooting it, he had a movie out that was like #1 at the box office, and like so everyone in the community was like, holy fucking shit, like we're working on this thing, it's gonna do this guy, and like, you know, and so that was exciting, and it's fun, yeah, and so I do more and more want to work with people, not because they're established, but mostly because they're good, you know, and like I wanted Chan to be in the movie. Honestly, less because he's a famous actor and more because he was perfect for the role and because he's a great performer.
I guess I was wondering, do you expect, like Channing Tatum to actually come on his own eventually, and other people like him to come on his own and participate and contribute just because they go online and they read that cool story and they're like, oh, okay, I could like do something with this. So
Right.
I guess it's their own effort rather than
Rather than me bringing them. That's a good question. That hasn't happened yet. I'm trying to think if it has.
But well, he's actually collaborated on a couple.
He did a bunch of stuff other than, that's true, he did a bunch of stuff other than what the project that I brought him onto. Actually, a bunch of cool stuff. And, you know, also, like, he was, the actress that he was working with at the time also put up some stuff, and, so, yeah, I mean, I think it is starting to happen, and I think it'll happen more as it grows. But, yeah, so that, yeah, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of.
Thank you.
I just had a couple of somewhat legal questions about how you structure this. In terms of your collaborators, do they actually give your organization the copyright and what they create, or just give you permission to use it? And second, if these things do make money, do you have a legal obligation to share it with them, or is that just something you intend to do just as a matter of fairness?
Yeah, good questions. So the first answer is when someone uploads something of theirs, they give HitRecord non-exclusive rights to make money with it. So, for example, Sarah Daly, who wrote that story that short film was based on, she still owns the rights to that story. She could go publish it or do whatever she wanted with it. But we also have the rights to do what we do with it. And yes, we are legally obligated then to take any profits and distribute them amongst the contributing artists.
Thanks.
As we see fit.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just wondering, so like, I feel like typically, I guess, in underground communities, a lot of the community takes pride in, you know, their work being underground and not in the mainstream.
Right.
And so do you see this project as something that's bridging the gap between the underground community and the mainstream scene, or, you know, something purely for mainstream that you're trying to make into big productions to make money off of, or something purely just underground for the community, the users?
Yeah, that's a good question. Me personally, I've always felt like if something's really great, it's great because it's great. And the more people that see great things, the better. I'm happy with that. You know, so like I remember when I was young and I listened to a bunch of punk bands, and then some of them would get on the radio and stuff, and some of the kids at the shows would be pissed because this band that used to not be on the radio is now on the radio, and I think when I was younger, I used to get pissed along with them, you know, because it was cool. But in hindsight, I'm kind of like, it's great. It's great that there's 10-year-olds listening to Green Day. Like, that's good music, and it's making the kids jump around, and that's good. And I'd rather have good music on the radio than bad music on the radio. So I would love for, you know, the Tiny Book of Tiny Stories to be on the shelves at Walmart. I mean, I wish there weren't so many Walmarts in the world, but since there is, I'd rather have this book there than some other thing, you know, so that's kind of my feeling about it. Cool. Thanks.
Hey, I work for Creative Commons, so I'm pretty interested in the way that rights might be extended to, or permissions might be extended to people outside of this community down the line. And I'm wondering if you see a future where on HitRecord, you know, that people not in the community could actually utilize the creative work of this world and do new things with it outside of HitRecord.
Right. Well, yeah, so I meant to bring this up when you brought up Creative Commons. For a while, when we were conceiving of this, our idea was to have our legal terms of service basically be a Creative Commons license that was slightly modified. The reason that we chose not to do that is because we want to do business with traditional entertainment industry companies. For example, we worked on a project, this dream documentary that ended up as a bonus feature on the Inception Blu-ray DVD, which was great and so thrilling for all of us and all these, the community to have their work, their images, their animations, and their music and stuff on, in this documentary that was on the Inception Blu-ray, right? That wouldn't have been possible if our legal terms of service was a Creative Commons license, because Warner Brothers, who puts out the Inception Blu-ray, would not have accepted that. But so that's why we had to sort of say, all right, we'll be in the spirit of Creative Commons, but we'll have to start from scratch and build something that gives us the right to sell what we've done to Warner Brothers.
No, and to be clear, it's not. I wasn't trying to guilt you into using Creative Commons. It's more like conceptually, do you see a framework, whether it's Creative Commons or something else, where just the world has some sort of way of utilizing this stuff that they don't have to actually enter into formal agreements that have commercial implications, whatever it is, but just. I mean, you can say, look, we're not going to sue anyone who takes it and makes a music video out of a couple of the assets, but is there a way that you'll actually sort of extend the permissions that aren't extended to people and to the HitRecord community already to the rest of the world in a way that, gives them that, at least philosophically, is that something that you would consider?
I guess I would say I feel like I have extended that invitation by very virtue of what the site is, that anybody can, but yes, you do have to sign up, and yes, you do have to sort of agree that, because here's the thing, people who put their stuff up on HitRecord do so with the assurance that I've given them that if it gets used to make money, they'll make money off of it. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't really extend the invitation to people to use this stuff outside of HitRecord, because then I wouldn't be able to protect the contributors. And I would say, we're super open and cool. There's no reason not to just sign up. And if you wanted to do something with our stuff, hop on.
Is it okay if I lower the mic?
I think it comes right out.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to say I really enjoyed looking at all the projects on the hitrecord.org. But I was wondering, because I feel like to a certain extent, there is a barrier to becoming a part of this HitRecord community, because first you have to have access to all this computer technology, and then people might be creative and artistic, but they might not know how to use these technological devices. So I was wondering, as with your position as an actor and with the money that you're making, are you looking into future paths of giving voices to people who might not be able to join this community because of their socioeconomic status?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Yeah. I was recently watching this movie, Waiting for Superman, which is all about public schools in the States, and it made me think, man, it'd be so cool to do something with the education system and bring this kind of thing to, and there are organizations, there's one in New York called Ghetto Film, in New York it's called Ghetto Film School, and there's one in LA called, I forget what it's called, but there are organizations that do stuff like that, and I haven't done much more than give them money at the end of the year so far. But I would love to try to do that, to further that, to provide not only access to the tools, but also instruction or whatever on how to use them to people who don't have access. Yeah, I would love to do that. It's on the list. It's there's a lot to do. It's a good idea.
Yeah, I had another legal question, not really with regard to copyright, but with regard to laws about where you can and cannot shoot. And does that hinder creativity? Because in previous projects we've tried to work on short documentaries and whatnot, I can't emphasize how frustrating it is to go through the permit process. Or if you want to shoot in Japan, you got to get an entertainment visa. Or all these various hurdles to creativity, and I was wondering what's your take on that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Reminds me of a funny story. We were going to do a big show in New York, which for various reasons had to get canceled, but we wanted to like make a commercial for it, and we wanted to shoot it in Times Square. And so we went to Times Square. I got like dressed up in a suit and everything, and we're like gonna make this commercial in Times Square. And right where we wanted to shoot, there was a cop standing right there. And so we were like, well, should we ask him, or maybe he won't notice, or because it was just me and Jared with that camera that Mark's holding, and so we weren't sure how it would take, and we decided though, cops appreciate it when you let them in on things, you know. So we went and talked to him and said like, can we shoot just a little video here? And he, you know, because it was just me and Jared, he was like, yeah, go ahead. And so we did, you know. And so I don't know. I feel like unless you're you know, I mean, like I said, there is definitely benefit to having a crew and lights and all that stuff, and that's a big part of the challenge is getting the permit for sure. And I've been frustrated by that in the past myself, but I've never been bothered making little things when it's just a few people and a small enough camera. I've never been bothered. So and I don't really have any like, I don't think those permit laws, I don't know, I don't have any like moral compulsion to follow them. I think they seem to.
I was just wondering, is anyone working on loosening the restrictions? Because a couple of projects we tried to work on, literally, we had to scrap the project because we couldn't shoot where we needed to shoot. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it completely destroyed.
What do you think would have happened if you had just gone and done it anyway?
Well, we do that as well.
Yeah.
But the idea of getting arrested and prosecuted for creative,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I feel like, I don't know anything specifically that's being done like that. But yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
well,
I have a friend who, I don't know, it reminds me of this. I have a friend, he's born in California like I am, but he's of Lebanese descent. And he fully got like stopped on the subway for having a video camera. Like he had his video camera out, and he noticed someone was like kind of looking at him and made a call, and 2 stops later, these cops got on the train and went right for him and were like, we need to see your video camera. You're not allowed to shoot on it. Like, I've shot plenty of stuff with a video camera on the subway, and I've never gotten stopped. So yeah, I think all that stuff's pretty suspect.
So we have time for one more question over here.
No pressure. So you mentioned divvying up profits among the artists sort of as you see fit, and I was
Yeah.
sort of wondering if there's been any disputes yet about your choice of how to divvy up profits, and if like bigger name artists did get involved, that would become a bigger deal if they have an expectation of getting a huge cut, sort of how that's gone.
Right. So the way we do it more specifically is when we finalize a produced version of a record, first of all, whenever you upload something on HitRecord and you've used someone else's thing, you have to cite their record as a resource. So all the different records have the list of resources that they use. So it's easy for us to keep track of whose work is used. And so what we do is when something gets produced, Jared and I go through it and we look at a list of all the different resources, and when we were coming up with our system for a while, we tried to figure out, all right, is there a rule set? Is there some sort of logic or system that we can come up with that'll designate, like, all right, for every minute of screen time, you get this percentage or whatever. We couldn't come up with anything that made sense because every project is different. So we decided it's just going to have to be kind of a case-by-case basis, individually done by hand. And that's what we've done. So we look at the list of all the different contributors, and we, just based on our opinion, say, here's what we think is fair. And we put that up on the site as a proposal. And then everyone has a chance to say what their opinion is. And we encourage them to do so. And we say, hey, if you think something's wrong, if we missed anybody, if we think, if you think it's divvied up wrong, please let us know. And people write in their thoughts. And then we address everybody's opinions, and we sometimes make changes. And I think the reason that there hasn't been any disputes is because we're upfront with the fact that that's how it's going to be. And so they're expecting it. There really haven't been any, I mean, there definitely have been things where people have written in and say like, I think that this should be that, or this should be that, or I want a different credit, or blah, blah, blah. And we've worked through those. But there haven't been any sticking points.
The challenges are actually more on the way that the artist is credited.
Yeah.
Instead of the split, like I want to be credited as an illustrator, not as, drawings or
Right.
drawings by.
Yeah.
And that gets to be kind of, not sticky.
It's
just
subjective.
Sometimes we just have to be super duper mindful of how an artist should or would want to be credited. And sometimes it's difficult to try to anticipate what somebody's going to be comfortable with.
But it's interesting that people have been valuing their credit much more than their money so far. Although, I mean, some of the artists have gotten quite paid. I mean, like the writer of those short stories, I think in 2010 we paid her like $6,000 or something like that. Most of the fees are a lot smaller than that for someone whose, a little photo of a flower is somewhere in there. They're not making $6,000.
We are out of time, but as Joe said, live show tonight, is it 7? 7:30? 7. So you can catch that tonight, and in the meantime, please join me in giving Joe a hand for coming and talking to us.
Thank you. And a hand for Tony.
Thanks for doing it.
Thank you.